Hey there, I'm Neil. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm the host of my new podcast, Pause and Rewind. I'll be chatting to changemakers, thought leaders, and role models who all share a common goal. They're striving to make the world a more inclusive place. And let's face it, we need it. Each guest has a unique story when it comes to doing their thing, and we often know who people are in the now. But how much do we really know about them? Pause and Rewind takes a moment to explore the experiences in my guest's life that led them to where and who they are now. Because everyone loves an origin story. We'll dive into tales, anecdotes, and what makes our guests tick. So, are you ready to pause and rewind? Hey there, and welcome to this episode of Pause and Rewind. Now, I've just sat down for a truly inspirational conversation with Liz Ridgway. Liz is England's first trans-femme PT and gender affirming fitness coach. She is also an incredible activist and campaigner. Her first campaign that she co-founded was L with the T back in 2018, which was hugely successful, and people still rave about it today. And also, I met her during doing some work during Trans People Are Loved. Liz is absolutely gorgeous, and I love what she does around creating inclusive spaces around fitness. And particularly as a queer person growing up, I didn't feel that spaces around sport were for me, and that mainly became from a loathing of PE, but not being encouraged. And so, Liz creating spaces where queer people can move their bodies and stuff is something that I really love that she does. But oh my gosh, I was not prepared for hearing so much amazing stuff about Liz's life, and I'm so excited for you to listen to this. So enjoy and let me know what you think. Hey there, Liz. Welcome to Pause and Rewind.
Hello, Neil. It's good to be with you.
It's so
Thank
good
you.
to see you. Now, we met last year during planning for Brighton Pride and for trans people are loved being part of the parade. And it was so gorgeous hanging out with you. And I just love your work and what you do.
Thank you, Neil. It was an absolute pleasure and delight to work with you as well. And yeah, the energy that you have is kind of contagious as well. So I think it was a meeting of two energies and two great minds. So
It
it
abs
was,
it,
yeah,
it
pleasure.
absolutely
Great
was,
memories.
and yeah, brought together by the wonderful Jude, who I'm sure I will bring on to pause and rewind at some point. Liz, I just want to start this off before we hit pause and rewind, and I just want to start this. Just this week, I wrote an article ahead of Mental Health Awareness Month in May about movement. Movement is the theme for 2024. And as I was reflecting on my own journey of kind of moving, discovering this, my one true love, which is running, and but also fitness. And I just your work really speaks to me because as a kid growing up, I wasn't interested in rough and tumble, right? And everyone brushed me off as this kid that wasn't into sport and everything. And as I grew up as a queer kid and adult, I just felt that spaces were not for me. And the work that you do, as England's first kind of like openly trans femme coach and gender affirming fitness trainer, is just breaking down those barriers. Are you happy to talk to a little bit about that and kind of what does that bring you when you think about what you're doing out there?
Well, great question, Neil, and thank you. I think, isn't it the case that so often that the sports and fitness kind of facilities have been fairly unwelcoming to gender expansive and LGBTQ plus people over the years. And it's not until we can get access to some safer spaces and to be able to express ourselves through whatever discipline that might be. It might be football, fencing, it might even be, kind of arts kind of based things like ballet. But, to be able to move your body, we get chemical reactions, through that. And so it's going to build into some kind of well-being, physiological well-being, mental health well-being. And certainly the last 6, 7 years for me has been about creating spaces wherever I'm going to work or wherever I can use my influence and work with organizations that have panels that are looking at how they can welcome more people into their facilities or to their associations, and use my voice and my influence as a trans feminine fitness professional and somebody that used to play sport, to encourage them to make some changes to attitudes and sign-ups to gyms, for example, make that more friendly and welcoming to gender expansive people. And I'm eternally excited for people, particularly out from our community, that can access sport in some way, and whatever that looks like. Gyms may not be the place that some people want to go to. Some people might want to play football, so it's about encouraging people to find something that's going to float their boat, so to speak, and really give them a sense of community and help them access some of those physiological and mental health benefits, and of course the social benefits that everybody else has access to. But just because of the way that sport's been built over the years and the gendered nature of sport, and physical activity, it's going to be nice when we can see some kind of equality built into this. We've got a long way to go, but I just keep pushing back against some of the orthodox ways of doing things, and just continue to make ripples wherever I can, because those ripples can grow to something more substantial. So, I love what I do. I love working with the people that I work with. For me, sport was saved me. It did create some. It did create some other issues that I've had to deal with, but really, end of the day, for me, sport in my early years was the thing that's kind of saved me from maybe not being here. So I'm eternally grateful for the sports organisations that I had the opportunity to work with, achieve some great things, played on the field myself, and today it's really nice to look back and see these organisations continuing on and some of them growing. So yeah.
To me, it's really beautiful to see you getting the recognition that you deserve for breaking down some of those barriers. And likewise, I keep on top of my mental health with my running, with my fitness. When I have an injury and I'm out of action, I'm a fucking nightmare. Like my mood
Mhm.
just literally plummets. But you're right. The mental physiological benefits are massive, and not just when it comes. We let's face it, as queer people right now, like we need that release. We need something to channel, particularly when we're struggling, like an outlet, but also for the joy element. It's not just about that. You mentioned it earlier, community and bringing people together, and the bullshit debates around access to sport at the moment are shocking, but actually
Mhm.
trying to move past it and actually just encouraging people to give things a try. Don't focus on those things too much.
Yeah, 100%. It's there's such a wonderful feeling being involved with. For me, it was about team sport, and of course, there's a wonderful sense of achievement when you can do things with a group of people working in a team, for example. But equally for me, my thing is my gym. I train just about 4 or 5 days a week, and it's part of my daily practice. So I meditate first thing in the morning. I might have a client, and I'll grab my workout time in between clients, and the day or the week just doesn't seem quite right if I don't
Yeah.
get to do that stuff. And like you say, when you're unwell or you're struggling with an injury or recovering from an injury, it can be quite frustrating. You just want to go back and do that stuff, because in some way it's a little bit addictive. We have a dopamine release, an endorphin release, and when you miss that, you think, what is missing in life? Oh
Yeah.
my God, I haven't been to the gym for a couple of
Oh,
days, or I haven't had my run.
for sure.
I mean, I've just been sitting out on the balcony watching all the runners go past to the Brighton Marathon. So, and I know how much of a buzz they'll get when they cross the finishing line, despite the pain, despite the exhaustion, and the possible dehydration. So,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
worth
it's
it.
it's a
It's worth
wonderful
it.
thing.
It is, it
Yeah,
is. And I know
100%.
I'm just kind of off the back of recovering from burnout myself. And my burnout
Mm,
was partly due for the fact that I just didn't factor in the things that made me feel good. I overlooked them during a really busy period. So, neglecting my running and my fitness contributed to that probably in
mm,
terms of preventing. But in terms of healing, it was putting my trainers back on and getting out there that kind of
yeah.
got me to a better place. You've shared a little bit about what the world, what your daily routines and stuff look like, but what does the world look like more generally for Liz Ridgway right now?
Um, yeah, well, that's a big question.
Yeah.
I We're in a difficult place as an LGBTQ plus community. We do need to understand that what's going on behind us is a premeditated, a very cruel and premeditated um, strategy to deny us opportunities in the world, whether that's participating in sport or just living a livable life. And I feel that pressure. And obviously, some of my clients are trans and non-binary, gender diverse. And I feel that the difficulties that they're facing, so it's going to be underemployment, lack of opportunities, lack of housing opportunities, um, and being able to live their lives like everybody else has the opportunity to live. So um, I am distressed. I have to say, I'm distressed at the way that the narrative is being driven, particularly here in the United Kingdom and the United States. And it seems, in a way, it's almost in isolation from other parts of the world where they're moving forward with
Yeah.
inclusion. And I can only think that it is really purely and simply a very cruel and premeditated political strategy. And we do know that this started back in 2015 and probably further back than that, but particularly in 2015 when a number of organizations got together in the United States and they found some commonality with some of our transgender proponents that have been around for a number of years and have stopped healthcare provisions in the United States, for example, in 1979, 1980. And these same people have literally crossed the aisle with no hint to its religious organisations that want to see the LGBTQ plus coalition broken apart, and they know that the most sensitive and the most vulnerable part of our coalition is the transgender community,
Mm.
and so we see all this, talk of legislation changes in this state, in this country, I should say, and in the United States, hundreds and hundreds of anti-trans legislation pieces being put forward to legislatures week in, week out, um, with the sole intent and purpose of breaking apart our coalition. So it feels like really hard work for me on a daily basis, and I have to check in with my mental health. Sometimes I need to take some time away from social media.
Yeah.
Um, but I do see some really nice things moving forward. We're a very creative community, and I see people creating spaces for themselves, opportunities, sports associations for themselves, and we'll bring our own into that. There's probably going to be a whole discussion about where we go with elite sport, and that's a really tough one. But we,
Yeah.
we have to remember that we are front and center of ridiculously, we're front and center of political campaigns leading up to elections. And you ask yourself, why? Why are they not concentrating on, the economy, and the real things are affecting everyday people? But that doesn't really cut it, does it? They're trying to appeal to a sense of their community that is extremely right wing and wants to deny us our opportunities. So they're sending blame our way, and it's just a diversion from the real issues that are facing everyday people in this country, in the United States. So yeah, it's a tough one at the moment, and I just hope that people can hold out and understand that perhaps through the next election cycle things might become a little bit quieter for us.
Yeah.
But certainly leading up to the US elections and the elections here in the United Kingdom, it's going to get pretty nasty, and I just hope people can see it for what it is. So
Yeah, I mean, I agreed. I mean, I'm not looking for an answer in that question that's kind of like some packed. It is bleak. There's cheap shots being fired. There's scapegoating. It's pretty vile what's going on out there. What before we jump into looking at your story in particular, what do you want to say to people? How can they make a difference?
Well, I think the way that people make a difference is depending on who you're talking to.
Mm.
But some of the successes that we've had, certainly as an LGBT, as a coalition, a community, we've had successes when we've brought other people into the conversation, particularly with our allies, and we look at the successes of equality, marriage equality in Ireland, Australia, here, and also the United States. But when we look at some of the campaigning, it was based around love and connection with your the people that are closest to you. Because when you can have conversations with those people, and that starts to translate at the ballot box as well. So when we talk about love, love connects people or brings people together, and it crosses borders, divides. And so I think that's an important thing that we can do. So your nearest and dearest, if you're trans, non-binary, or LGBTQ plus, have those conversations with your loved ones and express how the current climate is affecting you, your mental health, the state of your living situation. Have those little conversations because for me, it's about creating ripples. I don't think one person can create a huge, massive wave, and it's going to be just little bits here and there that we can do to try and encourage people around to this. The idea that we are just people, human beings. We're just trying to live our lives, and the way we've self-actualized might be different to what a normal cisgender person has done in their life. And it's pretty crazy, the journey that I've been through. But at the end of the day, I'm a trans feminine person. I just want to live my life. I want to be able to help and serve others and the greater good. So, um, we've seen this stuff before. A lot of the rhetoric, a lot of the dog whistles have been around with us for generations, or a number of generations. The 40s and 50s, lesbian and gay people being spied on by the US postal system. They were reporting back to the government, and then we had, trans women fighting police in cafes in San Francisco in the mid 60s, and all of this stuff was happening before Stonewall. So there are some elders, there are old trans, non-binary, LGBTQ plus people around that can tell those stories, and perhaps give us a little bit of confidence that what we're facing now is, a political ideology,
Yeah.
and one that we can probably push back and, um, you know, bring other people into the conversation, because we still know that the majority of people support our autonomy. So,
It's
I
just a
think there's
very
some good
loud
things to look
minority.
through.
Yeah, loud
Hmm?
minority, a loud, angry minority, but they're
Mm,
just very loud and sometimes with a big platform. So definitely
mm,
education, we've got the first ever Trans History Week coming up this year, which is
of
really
course.
exciting. Trans people have always been here. Education and doing those little bits and listening to the people around you and supporting them where you can.
Mm,
Liz, thank you
yeah,
so much. Are you ready to pause and rewind?
I'm ready to pause and rewind, Neil.
Okay, we got this. Let's go.
Mm.
So tell me all about little Liz.
Oh, little Liz. Goodness me, I was. I might some of my first memories about little Liz was I was very gender expansive, and I didn't know it myself. The kids around me at school knew before I knew. So, I mean, there's a good side to that, but also, I suffered quite badly with bullying and harassment because of my gender expansiveness, my gender diversity. Um, but I was a happy kid. I liked to be able to express myself through song and dance. I went to drama school. Um, we used to dress up in all sorts of garb. It might be clown costumes, it might be the opposite gender, and any opportunity that I had to get up on stage and say a few words or express myself um, was really exciting for me. My folks were of working class background. I grew up in a city called Adelaide in South Australia, hot, dry, and yeah, there was a really kind of got a sense of earthiness about my upbringing. So, there was a lot of things. We used to be out till 8, 10 o'clock at night. Parents, there wasn't the same kind of constraints and safety issues based around my childhood, but I had some good people around me as well. So my sister and mum, I'm deeply privileged and honoured to have been in their presence for so long. So they taught me a lot about feminism and equality way back in the 70s and 80s. And yeah, I think I was just really lucky to be able to grow up in Australia where things were, uh, let's say, a little bit more conservative, but it a lot more free to be able to do things. And yeah, my gender expansiveness was like coming out when I was 4 or 5 years old. So it's like some of my first memories were of being gender expansive and questioning myself. So and even though I didn't have the language or the channel to be able to express that at the time. So uh,
I love
yeah.
that. Jeffrey Weeks is an academic here in the UK, and he wrote a book about growing up as a queer kid in the valleys. But
Mm,
looking like but knowing that he was queer without any kind of like sexual identity label attached to it, knowing he was queer growing up. And when I heard Jeffrey talk about that, he's a former colleague at university, that made so much sense to me and
mm,
myself. And looking back now, being a queer kid and without the attraction or gender side of it, knowing that I was different, right? That
mm,
that kind of like the fact that I love playing with girls' toys and boys' toys and dressing up and just being a little bit out there. So
hmm
yeah, that really
hmm
speaks to me. What are
hmm
some of your what's one of your favorite memories that you can remember about being a child, an earliest memory or a favorite anecdote that you've heard about yourself?
Um, I'm just trying to. I mean, my one of my first memories was being on a beach, and I think there was. I think Mum had forgotten. Mum had forgotten. There was something to do with our swimwear, and I had to borrow some of my sister's stuff. My sister was 7 years older than me, and the boys, there was boys that were hanging around me whilst I was digging, making a sandcastle on a beautiful beach in Adelaide. And they were chatting away to me, and then there was this sudden moment that, oh my God, it's a boy! And these kids just ran off, and I just thought, oh goodness me, I was just like, being happy, being
Digging my
myself.
castle.
Pardon?
Just digging my castle.
Just digging building my castle. I'm a Taurian. I like material acquisitions. Um, I think that's kind of like that. That's kind of the weirdest expansive
Mm.
moment I had, but it's still kind of defined me. I think when I think to myself, yeah, there was stuff going on when I was 4 or 5 years old.
Mm.
Yeah, I think kind of going back to your question about, anecdotes. People used to say to me that I'd light up a room when I walked in, and these were people that knew me quite well. So I think that's always kind of stuck with me. And despite the difficulties of being gender expansive and a queer kid, I've always had energy which has been able to overcome difficulties. So it's enthusiasm. So when I look back at some of the notes that my teachers and some of my peers have written about me, over the years, they've always said, "My God, you just epitomize enthusiasm, enthusiasm for life, enthusiasm for projects, enthusiasm for yourself." So I think that's probably my best answer to your question. So yeah, that's my anecdote. Light up a room when I walk in. So
Gorgeous, and it's still so true, Liz. Like I remember when I obviously kind of chatted to you online a bit, and then first met you in person. So knew of you, first met you in person at Brighton Beach House the night before Soho Pride, and you were
yes,
just
yes.
exuded warmthness. So this is no surprise that that has been something that's kind of carried with you as a
Mm,
kid. Like that does not surprise
mm,
me at all. What other things
yeah.
did you get up to at school? What was your favorite hobbies, lessons? What did you enjoy?
So I was a maths kindergarten dropout. So I was useless with numbers. In fact, I've kind of thought that I'm suffer from dyscalculia. So I have a bit of a fear of numbers, that kind of stuff. So maths was terrible. Maths, science, chemistry, that kind of stuff. I wasn't great at, but I always used to. So if I had, D's and C's or E's on my report card, I'd always have an A plus for oral expression. So oral expression. So yeah, for me to be able to stand up in front of a crowd of people was something I love to do. I love to be able to tell people about this or that or an experience. So that was my most favorite part of school. We also we also used to go around to some care homes in the local area. So we had a teacher that was Maori. So we would do some Maori dances and ceremonies that from were across the Tasman Sea from New Zealand. So we would do that, and I had this ventriloquist doll which I used to use and entertain these older people with a ventriloquist doll. I don't have this doll anymore, and it was kind of a bit weird. I don't know if you've seen some of those ventriloquist stories, but this was something that I used to do. And then of course I started drama school, so I had, I was doing panto when I was 9, 10, 11 years old, and then trying to fit in sport in between, well, some sport in between that. That was when I was just starting to discover that it was a safety valve for me. Um, so yeah, I used to get up to things. Occasionally I'd get detention for being silly. But I had some I did have some good people around me interdispersed with some not so nice people, but yeah, I think that's probably my best memories of school. I was really lucky. I used to live close to school, so I'd go home at lunchtime, and being outside in Australia during the week was a great thing to do. But yeah, I do have some fond memories about school, but there was some big challenges I had to face. So.
I mean, yeah, I mean, bullying is something that I'd experienced as well.
Mm.
Really challenging. Not so much in primary school actually, but definitely in secondary school it was pretty tough. As you start to get a bit older, you said that looking back now, you can kind of like, understand a little bit about your gender and your gender journey. But do you remember when you first kind of looked around at the world and had an idea of what was going on in your sense of self and your place in the world?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one because I mean, I think 1979, 1980 were pivotal years for me. It was a transition from primary school to high school.
Mm.
We had all sorts of things going on in the world at that time. Um, I think, my sense of my place in it was a little bit confused because of my gender. I didn't have any language, and it wasn't for another couple of years before I realized where my sense of self was. So it was those late years of primary school, early years of high school. Um, I knew that I was a very practical person. The stuff I could do with my hands, perhaps not quite so intellectual as some other my peers and contemporaries, but being able to do things was um, something that I could, to use my hands to do something was very easy for me. And I had this outlet of drama school and being on stage where I could learn lines and be part of an organization that was putting stuff on for other human beings to watch. So I guess I was starting to see myself as having a sense of service to humanity in some ways. So and playing a small part in that was probably where I was going to fit in most of all. So that's how I saw myself at the time. So
I love that. And actually, looking at what you're doing now, that's showing up for people and bringing everyone along and that warmth and extending that energy, it seems like it's kind of has shined all the way through.
yeah, I think so. I think it's a running theme. It's like we were saying earlier. People saying that there's what is it that you bring your energy and your
Mm.
enthusiasm for projects and life, Liz. So it's not to say that I don't have moments where we're not quite on top of the mountain and we're descending down a hill in rapid descent, but it's to be able to navigate back to that is where I find my sense of self. So I quite often have a picture of myself in my mind's eye, and when I'm going through a difficult time, I just revisit that picture of myself, a smiling, glowing individual with great energy and enthusiasm, and it kind of brings me back. It helps me re-navigate, a bit like flying an aeroplane. You're inevitably going to be blown off course, but as long as you can readjust and re-navigate back to the direction, your end point. So yeah.
Yeah. And obviously that changes depending on
Mm.
what life is throwing at you. To teenage
100%.
years, it sounds like, quite
Mhm.
challenging teenage years. They're quite formative
Mm,
years in terms of they're often when we start to get the proper feelings, hormones, bodies changing, first heartbreak, for example. What did that look and
mm,
feel like for you?
mm. Yeah, I think my teenage years it was tough. Puberty was really, really difficult for me. I was 16 when I first realized I could have, there was an answer to who I was. It was, I opened a paper and there was a trans woman on page two of a local newspaper, and it was wow, that really hit home. So I think in
Mhm.
some respects that was a pivotal moment
Yeah.
for me. And I was just on the bus. I literally opened up a newspaper and there it was, and I realized that that was me. That wasn't necessarily, it wasn't me, but that's who I was. That
Mm.
was the kind of person I was.
What was the context of the
And
article? Do you remember what the context of the article was?
yeah, it was pretty much, the context was similar to what we've seen historically in the past, sex swap op, kind of
Yeah.
stuff. And
Yeah.
this particular person, they've come out of the services, what are they called? The armed services, and they've decided that they need to transition to a trans woman. And this to me was like, well, this is what I've always felt like, that I had no idea that it was possible to transition from one gender to another. And so I think that was a big moment for me. I also, yeah, the bullying had got to a stage where I was starting to become isolated, and I had emotionally unavailable parents and a emotionally unavailable family. And for me to voice that, that desire to transition, it just wouldn't have, it would have been, probably would have made my life more difficult at the time.
Mm.
And the most important thing was that I wanted to be able to live a little bit easier than the way things had been in the past. So I think I'd asked my brother if he could teach me how to kick a football, and he wasn't the greatest coach in the world, but it got me going. And as I started to practice and I started to participate, the bullying started to diminish. And I started to find an outlet for myself in some respects. But at the same time, I also started to hide a part of myself, which was I'd only just discovered. So, yeah, I think probably my teenage years were probably some of the most difficult. Yeah, from probably 12 to about 18, probably the most difficult period of my life. Puberty was very, very yucky, awful. And despite my efforts to attract, I was being rejected by lots and lots of people. Those early kind of dating, courting kind of things. So school socials, I spent most of the time sitting down. So,
Yeah.
but I did my best. I learned the dance. I was quite good at learning the dances. So at the time, Grease was happening. The movie Grease came out, Xanadu. So we were all. I was just going to say Nutbush City Limits, so Ike and Tina Turner were, that was this was the kind of music that I was
Mm.
playing with. So there was a culmination of finding
Yeah.
safety in music and that kind of pop culture.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
it was tough. It was really tough. I'd rather not sort of spend a lot of time thinking about my teenage years,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's what a lot of queer people, it's a very painful,
Mm,
confusing time of discovering who you are, but then having to assimilate and hide. So
hmm
it's a balancing act, and and processing that and coming through it. But let's let's move on, because for a lot of people, a lot of queer people, that is the case. And it's all a bit linear, isn't it? We know we go to school, we go to secondary school. But what happens next for
mm.
you?
What happens next? So I left school really early. I didn't get an opportunity to. I didn't get the opportunity to really succeed at school and set myself up well for tertiary education. So I left school when I was 16, to the earliest opportunity, and I started working. And I worked in a laboratory for a couple of years, which almost drove me around the bend. But I had a draw that was drawing me back to theatre, and it was quite a funny kind of mix of like wanting to play sport and being involved in theatre. So I think it was, I must have been at 18, 19, and I went back and studied production management at a college. And so I was there for 2 years, and actually, from really bad teenage period of time, these 2 years were probably the most. They just two of the best years of my life. So at college, so really full on, full time, immersed in theatrical production management, and we had a stream of dancers that were also studying performance dance at the same time. So we would do our productions with them, and I had an opportunity then. I met professionals that were working in the business coming to lecture us, and I got an opportunity to go off and work with a lighting designer in Sydney. So it was my first travel out of the state, and I lived and worked in Sydney for about 6 months. So this is where I discovered the queer community,
Yeah.
and more so. But yeah, this is where I attended my first LGBT, let's say, Pride event. It was 1986 Sydney Gay Lesbian Mardi Gras. Um, so things have really started to evolve from there.
Mm.
So I was back in doing something that that I had spent a number of years participating in theatre. So it was backstage, and we worked on some big operas, some musicals, and at 18, 19 years of age in Sydney, drinking champagne and having some oysters occasionally was just mind blowing for me. So yeah, I mean, finding a space in theatre, I mean, that was probably my savior
Mm.
in some respects, being amongst a lot of queer people in theatrical business. So yeah, yeah,
Finding a safe space,
yeah.
finding queer spaces, and I think like probably like me, being there is a safety and a magic that comes from when you're in a properly truly inclusive queer space, and
Mm.
also safe space for what you want to do. And what did you want to do when you grew up? Because obviously kind of like sporty, not so academic, and I definitely feel that side of things. Like, what do you want to, what did you want to do? Did you envisage you'd be doing what you did now?
I didn't envisage that I'd be a PT. I certainly didn't. I think probably in my pre-teen years, I probably saw myself as some kind of performer, somebody standing in front of a crowd of people, whether that was reciting lines from um, a play or presenting in some other way. I think probably oral expression was going to be something that I'd need to do. So whether that's teaching people, and I think that probably quite fits into where I am today. So this is about what I'm doing is essentially teaching people confidence, well, helping them
Yeah.
gain confidence by teaching them knowledge and skills, and helping them understand their bodies and how their bodies work. So I guess that's probably in line with it, but I think probably way, way, way back, I had some idea about being an actor or performer.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
And what you're doing, and everything from what you're doing now and in building that confidence and showing people what they're capable of really translates to your role and as an educator and activist and campaigner as well, and that bringing people along for the journey.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we couldn't do anything in life without involving other people.
Mm.
It's really difficult to do things on your own. And I think, yeah, bringing people together is one of the things I love to do. And I guess, from my position now, it's if I can hand down my experience in some way without it being explaining, if that makes sense. Giving the opportunity for people to draw things out of me. I think that's important to me, and I regard myself as an elder now. So, if I can help people at any stage along their journey in life, then that's great. I feel
Yeah.
great about that.
I had a chat with, I kind of Raga de Silva, who is one of the guests on
Mm,
here, and we were chatting about intergenerational learning and sharing and wisdom earlier, and creating opportunities for
mm,
that. It's really important that we come together and learn from each other.
100%. Yeah, yeah, 100%. And I think something that I'm experiencing or feeling quite strongly is that, I think there is a certain there's a huge amount that elders in our community can teach us. And I still look up to some of these people I've followed for years. I still look up to them and think, wow, I've learned so much myself about how the world works through their eyes and their experience. So, um, yeah, who knows? We'll see. But yeah, it's nice to be at that stage where I can help people and pass on some knowledge and experience. If it's going to help them in any small way, that'd be great.
That ties really nicely with my next question is when did you find your voice in inclusion? You know, this pause and rewind is all about shining a spotlight on people working in inclusion. Um, I love storytelling. I want to bring out people's stories. But also I want this to be a resource so anyone can come, anyone that wants to carve out a career or a space in inclusion can take away insights, takeaways and stuff. So when did you first find your voice in, I want to do something that makes a difference and makes people feel valued and like they belong?
Yeah, I think probably it was so if I'm talking about my current, current kind of career as a gender affirming fitness coach, I think it was post transition. Well, when I say post transition, when do we ever stop? Some people,
Mm,
people often ask that question, but I got to a point in my transition where I felt it was okay for me to return to a fitness space and a gendered fitness space. And it was from there when I was visiting these spaces with friends that they were just, Liz, you've got so much to offer us. You're helping me. Um, why don't you be a PT? And I'd often thought about it. I've spent years and years in gyms, and I've worked for fitness organizations from the early 2000s. And I think that's where I think that's certainly where I felt like, okay, this is my calling. And for the time being, and being able to help people feel comfortable and confident in a fitness space, let's be real, it's really difficult to get a space like this behind me on your own. I mean, I know it's only a filter, but to be able to access gym, you're probably going to have to be there with other people. And I think being able to just offer that confidence, and so many people say to me, it's like, Liz, just to know that you're in this space
yeah,
and working in this space makes me feel comfortable. I can visit there and know that at least there's somebody that's going to be on my side who's
yeah,
got my back. So I think that through that, my presence in these spaces has helped a lot of people. And I guess, that's probably most recently, the last 6, 7 years is that's been kind of my raison d'etre really, is to have the visibility in these spaces, despite some people's challenges to me. I think that's been beneficial for more than myself, for a whole range of people in the community. And I'm not just talking about trans and non-binary people, I'm talking about cisgender women,
yeah.
cisgender men, queer women, queer men, that you can so easily feel intimidated in a fitness environment. So it's not just,
Yeah.
a trans and non-binary thing. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. It's about bringing representation and diversity to those spaces and saying that they're for everyone. We're on an equal playing field here. We're all in this space to do the same thing, which is to improve our
100%.
bodies, to improve our minds. Doesn't matter how we
Hmm.
identify or what our gender might be. So that when you bring it to a
Hmm.
common playing field, you start to see that
Mm.
actually we're more bound by our commonalities than we are our differences. And
Hmm.
and some people are willing to be educated and look past that, but some people
Hmm.
just struggle. And as the wonderful Dr. Ronk said,
Yeah.
you cannot be what you do not see. So you being in those spaces will be
Mm.
making a difference to. Fantastic. Thank you. And then obviously
Mm.
kind of like, your inclusive nature doesn't just for you professionally, successful campaigner, L with the T, trans people are love. All of that is part of your journey.
Yeah, I think it's, when you are 100% woke AF, you understand
Yes.
that uh, you understand and you feel when there's a sense of disparity happening in the world. And I think, my activism, I mean, I was a union member for many years. I went to marches in Melbourne, 100,000 people, marching on Parliament House steps, that kind of stuff. My sister was a big campaigner, a fantastic feminist, awesome lesbian. So I learned a lot about
Yeah.
campaigning. We had some big things going on in Australia, nuclear disarmament, stopping the dams from being built in Tasmania and other parts of Australia. So although I had a long pause between things, to be able to access some of that passion and that enthusiasm, some of those skills, when I knew that my community was being questioned when anti-trans organisations decided to visit Brighton. I knew that I had to do something here. So, creating safe spaces, getting people to write up a dossier, background information on these organisations, because they have a lot of language that was dressed up with academic language, and it all sounded all very suitable and okay to many other people. But so, that was some of my first return to activism here, and then of course at that same time, the events in Pride 2018 in London, propelled us on to create something else, and I was in a position where I could help as a community facilitator
Yeah.
and just keep things moving on. So L with the T was born. And from a moment, it became a movement, and it still is today. It's just
It still
crazy.
is. It still is.
Jude and I were looking through, the hashtags. I'm like, God, people are still using this
Yeah.
all over the place. So
Yeah.
that was wonderful, and to play a part in Trans People Are Loved last year was also,
Yeah.
great
Yeah.
stuff. So um, it's we need to continue to think about the collective, whether that's the community, the LGBT coalition, or the wider community of humanity. We need to be doing good things, um, for the collective, and
Yeah.
pushing back against greed and
Yeah.
ego. So yeah,
And come together. People need to come
and
together.
100%,
Yeah. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Particularly white gay men. They need to they need to step up in my opinion.
Yeah, well, it's really funny. We're having a conversation about this a couple of nights ago, and I've always found a lot of support amongst cis gay guys, cis lesbians.
Mm.
I've always found our community just such a safe space to be. And in actual fact, I think it was when I did come out, I actually, I was 22 years old. It was only a couple of years after that original event I told you when I went to Sydney.
Yeah.
Gay and lesbian Mardi Gras was only a couple of years later that I did actually come out. So 35 years later, I'm still here doing stuff. But I've always felt safe around gay, lesbian, gender diverse, bisexual people. I've always felt comfortable, and I felt like people have generally speaking got my back. And more often than not, it's going to be one or two very small voices that
Yeah.
of dissent that are not really part of our community, or they just
No.
don't get it. They just don't understand that we're here because we're oppressed by the same group of people,
Yeah.
whether we're gay, lesbian, non-binary, trans, intersex. So, and that's why we're part. That's why we are a coalition. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
It's frustrating that they just don't see it. You
Mm,
mentioned earlier your mum and your sister, and I just felt
mm,
such a I felt like a lot of love was in your comment. And my next question is
mm,
talk to me about the person that has shaped you the most.
mm. Yeah, it's probably going to be my mum and my sister. So when I popped along, I was a mistake. My mum had an ectopic pregnancy, so she had part of her reproductive system removed, and was told that you'd never conceive again. And then 2 years later, hey, here I am. But for my sister, I was a new thing, and she had the opportunity to change nappies and all of that kind of stuff. So very very early on, I had a very close relationship with my sister, and um, yeah, I think I was the first one she came out to in the family. And when I can remember that night, we were drinking whiskey at the Adelaide Festival Centre bar, and she said, "I got to tell you something." And yeah, so my relationship with my sister was probably the strongest, and with my mum, so it was just deep, deep, deep motherly love, and to lose them both over the years, was a real visceral feeling.
Mm,
But there's just such wonderful memories, and as I said
yeah.
before, to have that opportunity to be in their presence for so long. My sister was a bit of a disruptor as well. She created women's theatre groups in Australia. She toured. She was a great performer. So she was really such a wonderful role model to look up to. And my mum was just the epitome of an angel, really. So,
Oh,
yeah, so probably the people that shaped my life the most and gave me the freedom. I said to Mum, I said, "What is it? You know about?" She's, "I just wanted to give you the opportunity to experiment with your life, and so whatever you want to do, I'm here to support you,
Oh my
darling." So
gosh,
just
that's gorgeous.
mm,
Gorgeous. Oh, I can feel
mm,
that. I can literally feel the love that you have for them. It's
yeah,
beautiful, beautiful.
yeah.
My final question for this segment, Liz, is
Mm.
looking back now, what are you
Mhm.
most proud of to date?
What am I most proud of today? I think it's listen, I've had a wonderful life, honestly, Neil, and I know that, as a trans person, we kind of front and center is the difficulties that we face every day, probably mental health and constantly keeping a check on our health, and maybe fewer opportunities than our cisgender counterparts. But I've fully lived a life, I've had three careers basically, worked in the arts. I worked in civil aviation for 7 years as a trolley dolly, a tart with a cart. So that was a super exciting life, and seeing part of the world. Yeah, I mean, there's so many good things that I've done, and sometimes I have to pinch myself to look back that I've had an influence over,
Yeah,
two or three careers. I think probably what I'm doing now is where I was supposed to be. And I've still got channels open in case new stuff comes towards me, but I think it's about how I've lived my life, how respectful I've been to other people, and how I've been able to open my mind to other cultures, other people, and to learn things, to let people teach me things about their own lives and their own experiences. So I'm pretty proud about that honesty and that openness that I'm able to live with today. And yeah, I'm a survivor. I'm still here too. So
still are, still here, and yeah, just yeah, so lucky to be your friend and to get to see this. So thank you so much for sharing so generously. The House of Happiness is London's ultimate sober clubbing extravaganza. We're led and delivered but created for all, whether teetotal, sober curious, or just taking a booze snooze. We love a day rave, and on a Saturday afternoon you can expect banging house tunes, DJs on decks, dancers on podiums, and a fully stocked alcohol-free bar. Flamboyant, bold, with a glitter station to boot. We're all about safe, inclusive fun, and we even have a pre-meet so that you can make new sober buddies before you hit the dance floor. Grab your tickets from Instagram now at House of Happiness Official, and we'll see you on the dance floor. I have some quickfire questions for you.
oh,
Is that
okay.
good? Cool.
Yes.
What album, book, or movie has had a lasting impact on you?
Okay, so albums probably it'll be to do with ABBA, but I just can't think of the album before Arrival.
Big ABBA fan?
Oh, yes, I was a big ABBA fan, 1976, 1977. Yeah,
Amazing.
so film wise, film wise, it's a really good question. Currently, I just love Milk. I love Harvey Milk's
Gorgeous
story,
film. Yeah.
and the way it was portrayed by two wonderful actors.
Mm,
So that just sits with me whenever I feel like the struggle's a bit too much. I'll pop on Milk and have a look about.
yeah.
Have a sense, get that sense of experience about the little things, the little ripples that we can start and create, and how that builds and builds and builds to something bigger. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think they're probably. I'm not so much a great book reader, but I'll probably The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle.
Okay. I've heard that one
Mm,
mentioned a couple of times. I
mm,
went to see Milk in the cinema by myself, and I still remember walking away
mm,
feeling very emotional and very kind of like, yeah, it's a very impactful film. What's
mm.
a saying that you live by and one that you'd like to put in the bin?
Oh my God. Um, oh goodness me. Okay, probably I'll just go with it is what it is.
Is that a
And
favorite
that's
or
probably
one that you put in the bin?
no, I think I'll put that in the bin.
Do you want to hear
Um,
something funny? That
what's
is
that?
my saying to put in the bin, and I actually managed to
Yeah.
put it in the bin. But it took quite a lot of coaching to stop saying it.
Mm,
But also
mm,
Nancy Didia, who is another guest on this, that was her saying too.
Really?
Yeah.
How interesting.
Mm.
How
It's
interesting.
horrible saying. It just reeks of complacency.
Yeah, yeah. I think yeah, it is complacency and it's a kind of a fobbing off, you know.
Yeah.
The other expression that's slightly I'd like to put in the bin is when you ask somebody how they are, and in England, or sorry, in the UK, they say, "Oh, not bad." And it's like, "Oh my God, like how can you be not bad?" It's like, can you not be like super duper good or like I'm gonna pop out and have a great day kind of thing?
No.
I'd like to put not bad in the bin.
Okay. Not bad. And what's
Um,
one that you live
one of
by?
my one that I live by, if I have to talk myself into it or out of it, it's not going to be right for me.
Okay. There. Love
That's
that.
what I'm working with.
What's been the best adventure of your life so far?
Oh, goodness me. Oh my God. Do I have to break it down to one?
No?
Um, I think, listen, being a flight attendant was a great adventure. I saw and met some amazing people. But equally, you know, my transition's been a bit of an adventure. I've got some very funny things to convey. I've got some less funny things to say, but it's been very, very rich, if I'm able to put that rich in inverted commas. And then I spent like 20 odd years working backstage with some amazing people, Neil, amazing people. You know, I don't want to name drop, but I have to. I mean, I worked with Nina Simone for 10
Oh my
shows in
God.
1992. So I had this opportunity to work with some wonderful people in that world. And, you know, I'm just was on my knees praying and thanking the universe for putting me in a position where I could work, you know, adjacent to these people. So I've had
That's
some very, very good
incredible.
adventures.
Liz, you
So,
need to write a you need to write a memoir.
yeah, maybe I'll start. I'll get somebody. Maybe yeah, maybe I'll get in contact with a ghostwriter.
Or we need your own we need your own podcast series or something like that to dive into all this. My
Yeah,
final
yeah.
question for the
Mm,
quick fire is the focus of pause and rewind is people's origin stories, right? We often
mm,
know who people are in the now, but
mm,
because everyone loves an origin story, what
mm.
are three words you would use to describe your origin story?
My origin story. Um, so humble, um, working class, and self-effacing.
Okay, thank you so much.
Mm.
Okay, let's fast forward a little bit to now. What exciting things do you have coming up?
What exciting things have I got coming up? Well, this coming Friday, I start a service which I'm going to offer to the trans non-binary community. So it's small group PT for trans non-binary people. So we're taking over a gym. It'll just be them and myself, and just be another opportunity for me to really upskill some people from the community that can participate. So trans and non-binary takeover at the fitness bar where I'm currently
Hey,
based as a PT, and they're welcome to bring their allies if we've got enough room. So that's something really exciting that's coming up. So yeah, really super, super duper looking forward to that. And I'm excited about summer. I always am. I mean, born in the Southern Hemisphere, I like it hot.
yeah, and
So
summer in Brighton is gorgeous.
it is gorgeous.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So, yeah, those exciting things coming up. So, I think that's the best I can look forward to at the moment. So it's great.
yeah,
It's really cool.
fantastic. Thank you. And what brings you joy?
What brings me joy? What brings me joy is being able to, well, it's about creating a life for myself on my own terms. And I think that's what being trans is all about, is the ability for us to identify ourselves on our own terms without the concepts of white supremacy, colonialism, these only ways that we are allowed to live as a man or a woman or
Hmm,
being gender expansive. You know, I think, um, yeah, that's kind of where I'm coming from. So,
absolutely. And it's not asking much, is it? It's not actually just asking much for someone to just be able to live authentically as
oh
themselves.
yeah, 100%. And you know, I've always had this. I always thought life and living on a civilized planet was about um, acknowledging and believing somebody when they told you who they
Mhm.
are.
Yeah,
And I think that's the unwritten contract that we sign when we come into this life, is that we really should be accepting people for who they when they tell us who they are.
face value.
So yeah, face value, um, and I think that's what's most important to me. That's kind of how I'm
Yeah.
living, so and continue to live. So.
Thank you. We're really keen to share practical takeaways. Now, obviously, careers in inclusion look so different, from one person to the
Mm.
other. But for me, what practical takeaways would you have for someone that wanted to maybe carve out a career in inclusion or just create something inclusive for society?
Well, I think sometimes that um, we can be paralyzed by decision making and thinking, oh, is this going to work? Is that not going to work? I think if you've got a passion, if you want to start a football team that's based around non-binary people or trans inclusive, you just go ahead and do it. I
Do
mean,
it.
I did that with two other women back in 2017 with a local Australian rules football team that's based here in Brighton. It was a men's team. They'd been in formation since 1991, and there were just three women that are turning up regularly to train with them. Eventually, it was just, well, we've got to start a women's team. So that team's going now with a squad of 35 people. So we've made space. We've created space for women to play sport, and you just, I think the best thing is to just go ahead and do it. Start planning it,
Yeah.
and you'll find the outlet. One of the things I've been talking about is that, particularly in terms of like sports bans that are banning transgender people from participating, is that as another end of that, you're starting to see the trans community coming up with their own concepts and their own ideas and creating these clubs and associations where people can participate. And that's what it's all about. People that navigate towards the sun are going to find solutions, and they're going to find positive solutions. So, just go ahead and do it and try and connect with people that are like-minded and want to do the same kind of thing to help support you. So good luck with it,
Thank you so much. And I have one more question, Liz. What
please.
words of wisdom or
Mm,
encouragement do you have to anyone out there to help them get to wherever they are going?
mm. I'd say that, we often get knockbacks or challenges or barriers to the way we want to do things in our life, and just to keep moving, just trying to find a way around the barrier, over the barrier, and don't stop, don't stop asking the questions. You're going to find an outlet, or you're going to find people that support you. So if you've got that passion, that drive, just go for it, and don't hold back.
Liz, thank you so, so much for joining me for Pause and Rewind. Honestly, you like such a fab guest to have on as I launch this series, and just I feel like I've just got to know you so much more over the last hour. I'm really just so grateful for you. Thank you.
Neil, it's so good to be with you. Thank you for creating these podcasts. They're going to be invaluable for people and our community. It's such a good thing to know you, and thank you.
Thank you, and I'll see you in Brighton soon.
Please make it
Yes,
happen.
will do. Thanks, Liz.
Much love to you.
Wow, what a conversation. I am just filled with love and appreciation for Liz. I loved her anyway, but I do even more so now. I just got this wonderful feeling when Liz was talking about the impact and the influence that her mum and her sister had on her and continue to have on her, and just that feeling of warmth when she talks about them. And just I love the fact that as a kid, when people would talk about Liz, they would say that she would light up a room, and she really does. She really does. She just brings you in, and that's gorgeous, and it's so transparent that that is who she is, whether talking about the work she does in fitness, or her campaigning, and just her general nature. I also love the fact that she has lived a life. from being a trolley dolly and a stage manager through to what she does now. I loved the name dropping, having worked with Nina Simone. We carried on the conversation afterwards, and I heard a few more names, and I'm desperately encouraging Liz to write a memoir because we all need to hear it. It was gorgeous listening to Liz's story, and a story that's not without its challenges and things to overcome. And life is not easy for trans people right now. And I'm just so grateful for Liz, for the work that she does, and the way that she invites everyone in to make a difference, and to step up and stand up to some of what the trans community and the queer community abroad are facing right now. Liz, thank you so much. Pause and Rewind really is about taking a moment to appreciate some people's stories. And if you really listen, you do hear, see, and feel it. And I really feel Liz's story to my bones after that conversation. So if you enjoyed this conversation, please let me know. Please share Pause and Rewind with anyone you think might want to listen. I'll be bringing you more people's stories. And thanks for listening. Cheers.